away record, and they looked like it at times in the first half, didn't they? I mean, you could argue that the Austin try was quite fortunate.
Yeah,
you could have easily seen that as a knock-on, easily.
Yeah. I think if it had gone up no try, it would have come back no try, I think.
Yeah, totally agree with that. But yeah, tactically, Hull just looked like they didn't have... Either they didn't have any tactics or they weren't listening. They weren't communicating with each other. The tactics appeared to be just get the ball wide, but they hadn't committed anyone inside, so the guy on the wing was forced to come inside.
Well, Warrington were closing that down as well. So if they were trying to get the ball wide, it was being stopped 20 metres in from touch because Warrington's defence was really closing the net around anyone before they were able to get to actually do anything. That's probably why Albert Kelly ended up running the ball so much.
Yeah. But yeah, just like his drop when he could have been under the post.
Oh yeah. The game was but it just was symptomatic of players kind of not doing it.
Yeah, like the Widdop try where kind of Kelly was trying to shepherd it out of play, and there's just so many examples where they look like they couldn't be arsed. And I understand that kind of you lead that to you look at the coaching, don't you, and you look at their how open they are to the messages that are being shared by the coaching staff, but there's just a basic level of professionalism that seemed to go missing. And as Rob said, it's not the first time it's gone missing in the last 18 months, is it?
Well, how many bad second halves have they had this season? Wakefield away in the last fixture was a bad second half. Wigan was a bad second half. They got out of jail in the last 15 minutes or so against Hull Kingston Rovers, but you're talking about one of the teams at the bottom of the competition, and they were run close by them. I know in a derby it's not all the same and all of that, but other than that game against Leeds, they haven't been convincing in any game so far. And certainly, even in that game, I feel like the second half was a bit flat, but the weather turned like absolutely.
The weather turned on that game.
Miserable in the second half of that game, but still, the amount of dominance they'd had in the first half, you would have expected a cricket score even there. I'm not criticising them because they were brilliant in that match, and they have had moments of excellence in the season, but they've had halves of rugby matches for the last month where they've been abysmal, and they've given up a lot of opportunities to win more matches, even though they've won 3 out of 7. What about Warrington? Because this is, they had a hoodoo on them. They had a problem on the road. The errors that gave them field position and the slightly fortunate opening try will have eased those nerves, wouldn't it? Who do you think impressed from Warrington?
Who impressed me? This is the trouble. I only watched this game in retrospect after it all kicked off, and as a result, I was more looking at how bad Hull FC were. Let me think. I think Austin had some good moments. Widdop kind of appeared to be getting himself back into the throw of things.
He appeared confident for the first time this season. That's what I would say. By the end of this game, he appeared to have some confidence and enjoy playing rugby again, rather than anxiety about playing rugby.
Yeah, but no, it's
nice moments from Toby King again. He's a player that's had some really good moments so far this season, if not consistent over the piece entirely.
Yeah, it is hard. It's because you are unfortunately only looking at what they're up against. But yeah, because
Darryl Clark and Danny Walker were both able to make tons and tons of meters in the middle of the field and from dummy half, and part of that is yes, they were good at spotting that opportunity. They have a lot of talent for that sort of thing, but at the same time, part of it has to be the defence weren't at him properly. And I even think, like, looking down the team list for the Wolves, I think, Sitaleki Akwala had some really decent interventions when he actually was on the pitch in this game, which, you don't see him play many minutes. But then I think, but people weren't really challenging him from the other side. So was it that he did good, or was it that by the time he came on, they were just utter dog shit, like people have said?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Danny Walker, because obviously he started, didn't he, over
yes.
Clark. And
Which frustrated me because I've got Clark in my fantasy team, and I'm thinking about taking him out, and then he comes on and has a stormer, so I'm all right.
But yeah,
not that it matters.
No, not for now. But he was. Danny Walker looked good. They didn't miss a beat with one of their best players off the field. But yeah, overall, it's more you're more looking at it from the negatives, unfortunately.
So the big negative or news that came off the result of the negative, I suppose, was that Lee Radford was sacked as head coach of Hull FC immediately after their heavy home defeat by Warrington. Hull FC chief executive Adam Pearson told live television interview that Radford had been sacked minutes after the 38-4 loss. Pearson had not even informed the players who were left in the dressing room. Radford, who was appointed back in 2013, led Hull to 2 Challenge Cup successes in 7 years at the club. Pearson said, and I think this quote was taken from the 5 Live interview because I took this off the BBC website, so I think it will be the second interview he gave rather than the first one, but he said, "I've just had a conversation with Lee Radford and decided we are going to go in a different direction now. I've asked Andy Last and Kieran Purtell to take the team from tomorrow morning and galvanise the players and get back on the bike. We had to make a change because of the home form. The pressure has become too great and therefore I have had to make that change. He is one of the most hard-working coaches I have come across. He has honesty and has just taken it like a chap you would expect, and the man that he is. It is not a decision that gives me any pleasure. We have a big supporter base here and they need to see winning and entertaining rugby at home." So obviously this story in its own right had some comments within the fan views, but more comments on the news as well. And we start with Cav, who said, "I'm sad that Radford has gone. I think he's a good coach and a good bloke. He's funny as hell in his dealings with the Irish press," I think that's from me, sorry.
Yes.
And I already miss him. I think many, because Iris is like a different thing to me. It's an exchange that insurance advisors use to get like
I don't
comparison.
think that's what it is.
No, I don't think that's what it meant. He said, "I think many clubs would love to have him. It's not a massive surprise though, especially given how badly they played tonight."
Josh says, "Well, the hooky cookie has finally stopped being sung and he's out. The bed sheets are washed and put back in on the bed. But wow, I don't think I've ever seen that a coach sacked minutes after the game and live on TV. Feel sorry for the fans because this is going to be a difficult time."
Tom Andrews said, "Imagine winning 2 Challenge Cups, being constantly in the playoffs and bringing your club some of the best years in decades, then getting hung out to dry live on Sky by Mr. As long as I'm at the club, so will Lee Radford. And the major kick in the nads for Radders is the Dole office is shut due to COVID-19.
Joshua's granddad says, "Maybe the time had come for Radders to go, but the way it was handled stunk to high hell. Pearson, with a previous history of knee-jerk shooting mouth after bad loss, does nothing to put the club or himself in a good light. Not sure who comes next, but Andy Last is not the answer. Several players should be visiting Radders to apologise for the performance. It's goodbye and thanks for the memories, Lee."
AK Steel 69 said, Radders will go down as one of the 2 most successful coaches in FC history, just behind Arthur Bunting. Back-to-back Challenge Cups, and the coach to end the Wembley Hoodoo will be his legacy. Personally, he gave me 3 of the best 5 days following FC. He loves FC, and he immersed himself at all levels of the club, even redecorating the training ground in the close season. Ultimately, a coach has a shelf life. Thanks, Lee.
Yeah, certainly some, a couple of fans at the end there. There's obviously a recognition that he's done some major things for the club, and it's a poor way to leave it, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't take those successes away from him at all. The 2016 and 2017 Challenge Cups, and he has been got them consistently in the top half of the table. Sometimes just missing out on the playoffs. Sometimes just missing out on the the big dance at the end of the season. But he's one of the most successful coaches in the last 5 years of our competition by winning 2 trophies. You've got to credit him that. You've got to credit him with the fact that he's brought a team together that has some hard-working elements, has some entertaining elements. It's always sort of been a little bit like the Bradford mould that he played in a bit of his career, where you've got the big wingers.
Yeah, definitely.
And the composed, controlled kicking game halfback. But then around that, he did allow some mavericks: Kelly, Connor, Shaw. He let these guys express themselves and entertain us on and off. And certainly, there's been no shortage of high caliber forwards in his time. Taylor and Watts was a fantastic starting prop combination, I think. Ultimately, there's two things that is kind of going to go down the opposite side of his legacy for me. One of them is his style of play became restricted, so that it got to a point where the only way they actually seemed to do anything was to do something maverick, and that carries high risk. So you have to be in a good place as a squad, as players and stuff like that, to be able to execute consistently at that maverick level. And obviously it's hard to do, and so they've not been able to do it, and that's resulted in some inconsistency in the league in particular. Yet had those real high moments in the cup. The other negative part of his legacy, to sit alongside the fantastic cup successes, is the inability to develop young players. Really, you look through that side, and probably only Shaw and Bowden have come through the system at Hull and gone from being a junior at Hull to being a regular first teamer at Hull. And would you really get too much excitement out of Bowden? He'd be the fifth prop at most of the other top five clubs. I would suggest. He's a good player. He's a fantastic player to have in your match day 17, but he's not a player you're putting on your posters necessarily. And I think Jamie Shaw happened by accident, just because he was so fast. Because I'm convinced that he went through a spell of trying to put other people at fullback and not giving Jamie Shaw that chance, and no one else was consistent enough to sort of say, hold on a minute, this guy's so fast that we've got to give him that chance.
Looked into it slightly, maybe.
That's how I sort of remember the start of his career at Hull. And you look around, like Jack Brown, this is his first appearance this season. He had one appearance last season away at Catalans, and everyone thought, this kid looks really good. Why didn't he get drip fed into the team? With me and Sarah always talk about the centre Cameron Scott, because both of us think he's an incredibly talented player. He's a leader at his age groups all the way through, yet he doesn't get a sniff. Even when there's injuries, he doesn't get a sniff, and we just don't understand why, when all the age groups coaches are picking him as the captain, including on the international academy stage. It doesn't make sense. Danny Houghton has just seen off every other player who could play at dummy half, and whilst we recognise the immense contributions he makes to that team, has it been right for the team that he's played 80 minutes every single game for the last 6 years? No, probably not. And there's things like this that I think is part of why a change had to be thought about. You had to have some young players challenging those senior players. You had to have some upheaval to make some of those senior players evaluate whether the way they're going about things is right. Were they in a comfort zone? Because there was obviously great friendships there with that coach, because he's been around all those good times with all those players, with Scott Taylor, with Danny Houghton, with Jamie Shaw, with Mark Sneed. And I'm not saying those players mailed it in any way, shape or form. They've had bad performances, but they can get away with bad performances because they know they're never going to get dropped.
Yeah,
that's what they'd done for Radford as well as what Radford had done for them. That's my take on it personally. Fantastic job winning those cups. Terrible job making a consistent side and bringing through youth players.
Yeah, well, it's such a theme that it's become a bit of a comedy thing about the average age of the Hull FC team, and it is a problem. And Radford's been around 7 years. That's everything you're ever going to need to know about a coach by that kind of period. And it's not necessarily that it was the wrong, because we've had debates, or I've heard Sarah having debates where should have gone up before now, or the end of seasons or something like that. It's the change is the right one. It's just the